Once again, welcome back, my dear students, for Standard 6, Subject General Science. Students, we will be continuing with Module 2 of Chapter number 5, Substances in the Surroundings, Their States and Properties. My name is Miss Jagjeet Kaur. Students, before beginning with Module 2, let's recall what we have studied in Module 1. So we studied that when a substance changes from one state to another, the process is called change of state of the substance. Every substance found in our surroundings is in either the solid, liquid or gaseous state. If we heat or cool these substances, their state changes. In the 19th century, the scientist Willard Gibbs showed that the characteristic properties of a substance depend on its physical state and the arrangement of particles in it. The change in the physical state of a substance is an effect of the amount of heat in it. A thermometer is used to measure the temperature of the substance, and the unit of temperature is degrees Celsius. The temperature at which water gets converted into steam is known as the boiling point of water or ebullition. Then when water vapor cools, they again get converted into water, and this process is known as condensation. Then we studied about the freezing point of water, that is the temperature at which water gets converted into ice is known as the freezing point of water. Then what was the melting point of ice? The temperature at which ice gets converted into water is known as the melting point of ice. Now students, as we recalled what we have studied in Module 1, now let's see what are the learning objectives of Module 2. So in this module, you will be learning about the properties of substances like brittleness, hardness, elasticity, fluidity, density, solubility and transparency. Then you will be studying about what are metals and the various properties of metals like malleability, ductility, electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, sonority, color and luster. Now students, can you tell by observing the various substances and how will you identify them that a glass, is it made of plastic, steel or glass? Yes, the glass shown is transparent, so therefore the given glass is made from glass or plastic and not from steel. If the given glass breaks easily into small pieces when pressure is applied on it, then it is made from glass and not from plastic. Then a rod, it is made of iron or aluminium. Yes, the rod shown is made from iron. This is because the color is black or dark grey, whereas that of aluminium is bright grey or silvery. Now students, the third substance is a door, whether it is made of wooden or glass. Yes, correct. The door shown is not transparent. Hence, it is made from wood and not from glass. Now the fourth, a white powder, whether it is salt or chalk powder. Yes, the white powder shown is chalk powder. Now to identify whether the powder is of salt or chalk, perform a small experiment by dissolving the given powder in water. So students, if the given white powder dissolve in water, then it is a salt, and if does not dissolve in water, then it is a chalk powder. Now students, to answer the previous questions, we consider their properties, for example, their transparency, their hardness, weight, color, the sound produced from it, solubility, etc. And substances can be identified by studying their properties. They can be put to use according to their properties. So now let's study the properties of substances in greater detail. Now the first property is brittleness. Now what is brittleness? So let's try this. Tell me that what will happen if pressure is applied on the substances like chalk, brick, alum, glass, etc. Yes, these substances will break into small pieces or particles. So such substances are said to be brittle. So now let's see what is brittleness. That is, certain substances which break into small pieces on applying pressure. Such substances are said to be brittle, and this property of the substance is called as brittleness. So for example, chalk, brick, alum, glass, etc. Now students, let's learn the next property, that is hardness. Now for this, we will take an iron nail. We will try to pierce a cardboard sheet, wet mud and a piece of wood using the nail. Now what happens? Yes, the nail easily pierces wet mud but not the piece of wood. It can pierce the cardboard sheet with some effort. Now why does this happen? This happens because of the hardness of the wood. So we can say that the hardness of a substance is nothing but the resistance offered by it to the other substances which are being pushed through it. Now students, what is resistance? Resistance is the ability not to be affected by something. Now the example for hardness property is iron, rock, etc. Now students, stretch a rubber band and let it go. What do you see? Yes, the rubber band go back to their original shape. So some substances change their shape when a force is applied on them, but return back to their original shape and size when the force is removed. And this property is called as elasticity. So let's see how we can define elasticity. Elasticity can be defined as the property of a substance to change its shape when a force is applied and to regain back the original shape and size when force is removed is called as elasticity. Now example is rubber. Now students, we know that a liquid does not have its own shape. It usually takes the shape of a container it is put into. Now this property of a liquid to flow and change its shape accordingly is called as fluidity. Now the fluidity of any liquid is determined by how easily it can flow. For example, water, oil, etc. Now students, we will take two blocks of the same size, that is one block of wooden and the other block of iron. Now both the blocks, that is wooden block and the iron block, have the same volume, that is 1 centimeter cube. Now when both the blocks are weighed in a balance, what will happen? Yes, we can observe that both of the blocks have different weight, or we can say they have different mass. So we can say that the volume of two blocks is same but mass is different. So this difference is because of the difference in their densities. Now between substances of the same volume, the ones with greater density are heavier than those of lesser density. So students, we can see that from the wooden and the iron block is having greater density. So we can define density as the density is the amount of mass of an object in a specified volume. And in simple words, density can be defined as mass of the substance upon volume of the substance. So in equation form, we can write density is equal to mass upon volume. Now students, let's learn about the next property, solubility. Now for this, take a glass of water, add some salt and sugar to it and try to dissolve them. Now what do you observe? Yes, some solid substances dissolve in liquid, and if a solid does not dissolve in a liquid, it is said to be insoluble in that liquid. For example, salt is soluble in water, but we can say that salt is insoluble in kerosene. So we can say that the property of a substance of getting dissolved is called as its solubility. Now students, a substance is said to be transparent when one can look through it and see the things on the other side. And this property of the substance is known as transparency. And a common example for this property is glass, plastic, clean water, air, etc. Now students, identify the objects and tell from which substances are they made and what are these substances called as a group. Yes, the given substances are gold bars and iron bars. Gold bars are made from gold and iron bars are made from iron. And these substances are called as metals. Now students, substances like copper, gold, iron, aluminium, brass, steel, metal sludge, bronze are called metals. Now metals are found in the form of minerals deep inside the earth. Minerals from the earth's crust are processed to obtain the metal. In daily life, metals have various important uses. Students, now let us study some properties of metals. So the first property of metal is malleability. Now you can see in the picture that when raw gold is being hammered again and again, it gets converted into thin sheet. So we can say that gold is the most malleable metal. The another picture is of aluminium foil. Aluminium is also a metal. So by hammering aluminium again and again, it gets converted into a thin sheet which becomes as aluminium foil. So we can say that the property of metals due to which they can be converted into sheets by hammering is called as malleability. The next property is ductility. Now students, as we learned earlier that the metals can be made into thin sheets. So similarly, metals can be stretched and drawn into wires. This property of metals is called as ductility. So we can define ductility as the property of metals because of which they can be stretched and drawn into wires is known as ductility. Metals like silver, gold, copper, platinum can be drawn into fine wires. Now students, the next property is electrical conductivity. Now we know that electricity flows through metals and all metals are conductors of electricity to a greater or lesser extent. I'll give you an example that electric boards fitted on walls are made of plastic or wood because they are non-conducting materials. And if the boards were made of metal, then they would have conducted electricity and allowed current to flow through them freely. Now, this would have put the life of the person touching the boards at risk. And the second example I'll give you of the cooker, which we are using in our day-to-day life. So the handle of a cooker is made of plastic to avoid our contact with its metal body. Since metal is a conducting material, we stand a chance of injury when the cooker is hot. By providing a plastic handle, we prevent the flow of heat from its metal body towards us, thereby avoiding the risk of any injury. So we can say that the property of metals to allow electricity to flow through them is called as electrical conductivity. Students, as we learned before that metals are having the property of electrical conductivity. So similarly, when a piece of metal is heated at one place, the whole of it becomes hot. It shows that metals allow heat to flow through them. And this property is called as thermal conductivity. So we can define thermal conductivity as the property of metals due to which heat flows through them is called as thermal conductivity. Students, when we see some jewelry or some utensils or some ornaments made of some metals, we can easily identify by which metal it is made up of. So we can say that metals have a typical shine or luster, and every metal has a characteristic color by which it can be identified. So students, luster and characteristic color is the another property of metals. Students, if we pluck the string of a musical instrument like a tanpura or veena, ring a bell, or hit a steel box with a metal spoon, then a ringing sound will be produced. But if we strike a wooden table or a marble floor with a wooden stick, then it will not produce a ringing sound. So with these two examples, we can say that ringing sound is produced by only metals. So this property of metals is called as sonority. Now students, with this we have completed with module 2. Now let's summarize what we have learned. So we learned that substances have various properties like hardness, elasticity, brittleness, fluidity, density, solubility, and transparency. Metals form a separate group of substances, and metals are found deep inside the Earth's crust in the form of minerals. And metals have some common properties like malleability, ductility, electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, luster, characteristic color, and sonority. Now, here is an assignment for you all. So, the first question for the assignment is you have to underline the correct word. Now, in this, the statement is given and two words are given. From those two words, you have to underline the correct word. So the first question is the bulb of the thermometer is filled with magnesium or mercury. So students, here the correct answer is mercury. So you will be underlining mercury. So in the similar way, the remaining two questions you have to solve it by underlining the correct word. The second question is solubility or fluidity refers to dissolving of a substance in solvent. Then the third question is Malleability or ductility is the property of metals because of which they can be stretched and drawn into wires. Now the second question for your assignment is you have to answer the following in one sentence. So for that, the first question is, which are the different states of substances? Second question, state the different properties of substances. And the third question, which property of the liquid determines how easily it flows? Students, now the third question is you have to complete the flow chart with the reference of properties of metals. Now in this flow chart, three properties are given, that is malleability, thermal conductivity and characteristic color. These three properties are already given. So you have to complete the flow chart with the remaining four properties with the reference of properties of metals. Thank you, dear students.